This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv. I'd like to welcome to the show Richard Linklater and Katie Cokinos. How you guys doing? Thank you so much for being on the show, guys.
Great. Good to be with you, Alex.
Thank you so much.
It's so much fun.
So, I'm excited to talk to both of you about your latest project, I Dream Too Much, the project you guys did together. I know it's been around for a few minutes, so it's not the latest project, but we're going to talk about that project a little bit. But I wanted to kind of talk about not only Rick's filmmaking career and what he's done, but Katie, how you've come up as a director as well, and all these kind of other conversations about philosophy and other things we're going to get into. But before we get started, because Katie, you were with Rick when you guys were working. I mean, Rick, you were making Slacker, and Katie was around at that same time, correct?
I first met Katie, I kind of was finishing it.
Okay.
Just right at you were with me at those first premieres, and yeah. So.
You've been friends ever since?
Yes.
Yes.
We have.
So let me ask you a question, Rick. What for so many filmmakers coming up, especially of that magical time, which is the early '90s, which is kind of like the birth of independent film as we know it today. I mean, yes, there was prior to Slacker, obviously there was a month, and Easy Rider and things like that. But the whole Sundance, for lack of a better term, kind of like the lottery ticket kind of filmmakers, like the Kevin Smiths and the Roberts and those kind of times. You were one of the first to come out in the early 90s. A lot of them look back at you. Like I just had Edward Burns on the show the other day, and he was talking about, it was Slacker. I saw the breakdown of the budget of Slacker, and it gave me hope that I could do it. There's someone else who did it. So you're like, you broke the 4-minute mile, essentially, for a lot of filmmakers of that generation.
Yeah, I think that perpetuates itself because I'm sitting there in 1989 making my first. I had made one feature before and a bunch of shorts, but I'm like, okay, I can do a no-budget feature. But at that point, I'm thinking, I was coming off. There was an 80s paradigm, too. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Sundance-based. I think that's really the difference between the generations. It didn't have Sundance as a launch. It was just indie films, John Sayles.
Right.
Wayne Wang's Chan is Missing. There were all these 20 Eagle Pinnell's a Texas filmmaker Katie worked with, and I knew just to make the low budget, backyard, no budget, personal movie. That was a really kind of a archetype in indie filmmaking. Still is, that's what you can do. You make what you know, and it's kind of interesting, and that's what I felt I was doing. But at the time, I guess it was sort of unique to Austin that did mostly horror films and things like that.
Right.
But it wasn't unique to cinema. Shirley Clark had done it. And it had been happening in the 60s, the 50s. There's a nice history of indie cinema. It just didn't really, it was gaining more traction as a business, it had an outlet. There were these indie theater. There was a lot of festivals springing up. Cable and, VHS tape, there was an economy around it. So in the 60s, when you made your indie film, you showed it at the few film festivals. You played it at, Jonas Mekas played it in New York, and they showed it at Berkeley and a few other. It was a real scrounge around thing. Cassavetes would hire a bunch of young, hungry future distributors and hey, we're going to distribute this film. We're going to get it out there, so it was just, by the time I felt I came along and got lucky enough to get one of those distributors, the path was sort of, it had already been, it was out there. I was just I was a 90s version of that.
Right. And you,
yeah.
But when you submitted Slacker to Sundance, it got rejected, right? The first time.
Yeah, the first year, 1990. Remember that, Katie? Because we got, and it wasn't quite finished, when I got it there, but I was still disappointed. But, came back the next year. In the meantime, I'd had a very interesting year with it. Showed it in Berlin in the marketplace to 4 people.
Stop right there. How did that work?
Was a good festival.
But when you when you guys
Seattle was a real breaking festival because we were standing outside watching all these people going in, and we were like, they're coming to see Slacker. They're like, yeah, it's sold out. Like,
here's
what?
the difference. We're in Seattle in summer of 1990, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does it look like? It looks like everybody in the film.
Yeah.
Everybody in line looked like they could have stepped out of the film. It was this perfect match.
Yeah, you were preaching to the choir.
I know. It was a first really great response.
That really was.
I had actually premiered it in Dallas. There was a thing called the USA Film Festival.
Yeah.
Richard Peterson.
I got some really dismissive. I remember waking up that morning to some really dismissive, like, this might have been a good short, but it's a bunch of Austin people not doing anything. I read these my first reviews ever for something I'd worked so hard on. It was just these total reviews from Dallas. And then I think, God, do I even go to the screening? I was so like, oh, they're going to hate it. I'm in Dallas. They're just
but it was great.
But we did have a very good audience response.
Yeah, they totally got it.
Yeah, so that was encouraging. But,
and remember Dennis Hopper was there? And
that was a really fun festival.
You're like, that's Kit Carson.
Yeah. Yeah, because
reading Sam Arkoff. Remember they were featured. The great Sam.
Terrible name. Mars Needs Women. Now that's $1 million title, $30,000 movie.
Yeah, he was like, kid. Yeah, it was just cool. All these, you start meeting people, you're just so enthralled with meeting film history. Sam Arkoff. Oh yeah, you got a film here? What's your name? What's the title? A Slacker. Oh, bad title. You got to have like How to Stuff a Wild Bikini. Now that's a title.
That's a title.
That's selling foreign.
$1 million title.
$30,000
movie. Yeah.
And obviously you've been stuffing bikinis ever since in your career, and both of you guys ever since. That's all you do.
Mars Needs Women.
Mars Needs
That's
Women.
the title. Yeah. Because I remember watching all those movies on TV growing up, and you're meeting these guys behind it. He's like, we would have the poster made before we even did the movie just to see if it worked, if we could sell it. And I go, there's a genius there. Studios should do that. I've made enough movies where they go, oh, we don't know how to market this. It's like, well, maybe we should have done all that before. If no one wants to see a movie called this that looks like this, I mean, I'm glad I got to make it, but you only have yourselves to blame. Do what Sam Arkoff did.
Roger Corman. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he's the king without question. All right, so for both of you, who was the filmmaker that was that catalyst that you said, oh, I can make that? Because you could study Stanley Kubrick all day, and you could study the greats and the masters, and we could all be depressed at 23 because we're not making Citizen Kane, which is the passage of the rites of passage of every filmmaker. Exactly. So who was that one filmmaker that you, Rick, and you, Katie, said to, like, you know what, they did it. I think I can make something.
Katie, why don't you jump in? Because we're probably on different timelines there as far as when we started thinking I can do that.
Well, okay, so growing up in the 70s and watching the Hollywood renaissance of cinema, I never thought I could do it because all I saw were guys' names. And I would stay till the credits just dying to see one female, one Polly Platt, who was the production designer, one Elaine May, who was the screenwriter, and
director.
I never thought I could do it. And it wasn't until college where my professors were turning me on to, Agnes Varda, Maya Deren, Shirley Clark, Chantal Ackerman. And so for me, it wasn't a budget thing. It was more of I'm a woman, and it looks like the boys club to me, Howard Hawks, John Ford, John Huston, and so do what I even have to say,
right.
would that even be cinematic? because I don't want to shoot anybody. And I don't want to, there's so many things I don't want to do. It's sort of like reading a Bukowski and going, yeah, that's great, but I'm not an alcoholic. So, or Jack Kerouac going, but do just those things. So it took me a while, but I do think I remember clearly checking, renting Last Night at the Alamo and taking it over to my sister's in Houston because I didn't even have a TV, and watching it and thinking, wow, this was made for $30,000 because it was very well known. Eagle got that film from a National Endowment for the Arts grant, and it was all in one location. So that's when I started kind of thinking, okay, it's just, first off, it's going to take some time to experience things that I even want to talk about or even want to tell a story about. But then, then it, you get inspired in stages, I think, so, and then you see bad movies. I mean, Werner Herzog is always telling, don't see,
the masterpieces.
Yeah, don't see, Chinatown.
That's going to depress you. It's going to depress you.
Watch a movie that's terrible. That's how you learn to make movies. But anyway,
well, that kind of gives you confidence at some point. I see this. I just talked to a big class of grad students 2 days ago at University of Texas via Zoom, of course. But the thing we ended up talking about was confidence. Just how do you get the confidence to lead a group? How do you get the confidence to think you're worthy of a film? I mean, I didn't have that same restriction in a certain way that you had, Katie. Like, you don't see names that make you think you're wanted. It's just the way you would as a Black or brown or Asian person. He's like, that's a white space,
Right.
I didn't see it, even though I'm a white male. I saw it as a white trash kid from East Texas. I saw it like, that's not open to people like me who come from where I come from. They're not going to let me make a film. Why would they? They don't let us do anything. We're just stuck. But I didn't feel the more I got into it, I thought, well, you can work hard. And I don't know. I definitely felt outsidery, but not as much as what you were describing, I mean, outside, but I think as a white male, you definitely there's some doors you can potentially get to that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it's both. It's closed off, but the world of arts always feels open. I mean, every musician feels that way.
It's Mount Olympus. Are you kidding? It's, growing up in Beaumont, Texas, you'd walk into the theater, sit down and watch, Reds. I mean, you just like, it's hard to process.
Yeah. But to answer your question though, Alex, to me, it was a slow formation I went from feeling I was a writer to being a playwright. And then at summer, when I was 20, I started watching movies seriously for the first time and very systematically. And I realized I was discovering like, oh, film. It's kind of the way my brain was working. And that was I remember that summer I watched Return of the Secaucus 7, the John Sayles film. And there were these American indie films were happening. And then I was watching a lot of foreign films. And it was a great time. I was at these repertory theaters in Houston and college. I was just seeing 4 films a day. So it started to dawn on me that, oh yeah, maybe you just buy a camera and you see enough indie films. But I'd studied it for several years, and it's funny. I'll reference the same movie Katie talked about, Last Night at the Alamo by Eagle Pennell, which there's been a restoration of in the last few years. I showed that film in Paris recently, and I showed it in the Czech Republic. I show that film around the world sometimes when they ask me to show some films from Texas. I'll show like Tender Mercies and Last Night at the Alamo to show like a variety of Texas films. But yeah, Eagle Pinnell got a $25,000, I think, or $30,000 NEA grant. He had made one feature before that I hadn't even seen at the time, but it was playing at the Houston Film Festival. And I remember going to that screening, and they showed it in 16 millimeter, and I was inspired just because it looked like a lot of other indie films I saw, but he had done it in Houston, the town I happened to be working out of. It just started to feel closer.
Yeah.
You know, you just felt closer, like, oh, okay.
Good point, closer.
Yeah, because we grew up, Hollywood is mythical.
Yeah.
So far away.
Yes.
And the films come from there, and they're these special movie star Hollywood people who make them, and all we do is consume them, you know? So there's really two levels of falling in love with cinema as a future filmmaker. There's films that just make you love cinema, and that is your Kubricks and your, you know, all those. It's like, oh my God, cinema is the greatest art form ever invented. You know, it's just like, it's everything, but it's intimidating in its essence.
But don't you think that
the films that you see and you go, oh, that's a little closer to home. That's how my brain works. Maybe I could do that.
Yeah, because you can't watch 2001 and go, oh yeah, I can do that. Like that's not a conversation.
My own version of that.
Yeah, like it's hard.
Inspired, but
Lester Tarkovsky.
I think it's very important, though, and this is it's important that we do have the gods sitting on Mount Olympus, because it's something that you need to work towards. And I think that's where the Film Society came in so great. When I was interviewed recently from somebody from Texas Monthly asking me about the early days of the Film Society, or just working in the Film Society, and it hit me in this talk that you're working on Slacker, but you're also like showing some of the greatest films ever made, and it's this nice, you know, what you want it, where you're headed, what you'd like to be, but what you're dealing with, you know, with your own personal vision, your own, you know, what you want to do with cinema.
Yeah, so I was talking to Katie off air a little while ago, and when I asked this question, she said that she hadn't seen anybody, that, you know, no female names or anything like that. And for me, it was I'm a Latino filmmaker from Miami, so I didn't see any. Like there was no Latino filmmakers. So for me, it was Robert. Like he was the first one. Robert was the first one that I saw, and in '91, I was working at a video store in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And Mariachi showed up, and I went to the theater to see it, and I was just like, and it was right next to a poster of Hard Boiled. I'll never forget a Hard Boiled John Woods with the baby and the shotgun. I'm like, what is that? So that was a double feature that day.
Good double feature.
That was a fantastic double feature. But it was the first time that I saw someone that was, and then he came out with his book, and I studied all that kind of stuff. But it was the first time I was inspired to, like, you know what? And I'm not, by the way, by any stretch, alone in that. He inspired multiple filmmakers. But for me specifically, as a Latino filmmaker, it was someone that really, really drew me. I think we all need that. We all need to see ourselves do it at a level, because, you know, you could look at, you know, there's a lot of Latino filmmakers out there maybe who look at Guillermo del Toro, and they're like, oh, that's great, but he's at a whole other level. It's nice to see someone be able to make something like, oh, I just need $30,000 and maybe I can make something.
Yeah. Well, it's inspiring on a couple levels. I mean, it's interesting with Robert. You know, he was like a year or so two after me, even though he's younger, and I met him around that time. But really, with Robert, it's that last name, Rodriguez. Robert's a kid from San Antonio. Right. He didn't really speak Spanish when he made that film, like so many of that generation. He picked it up, you know. But it's just like, yeah, anyone can do this. And then you see those female names. It's like, and then the black filmmaker, the Gordon Parks, you know, we all just, it's so funny. It's like politics, you know, just we're all there's identity and identification and
representation.
We should feel open. I think that's what's so exciting about the world right now, is tumultuous as it is. And I think barriers are really down for everybody. I mean, they've either come down or they're coming down. I don't think anybody feels that they're technically not.
Well,
it's still culturally, they know it's difficult, but I just think it's an exciting time when, I don't know. I just think the access is there. I don't know. I think it's good.
I love the Cocteau quote about film. He says it will only become an art form when it's as readily available as a piece of paper and a pen. When people can sit, and on another level, which he didn't also speak about, was that the representation is there too, that you feel like what my story is worth telling, and it's, and I can do this. I think it's gonna, I think it's really exciting. I think you're right.
It's finally come about. It was always a theoretical, Francis Coppola was saying, there's that little girl in Cincinnati who's going to make a film. Well, when he first started saying that, it's like, how? No one's going to give her a 35 camera. But that thing from decades ago really has happened, There's no barriers.
But he also said it was the last vestiges of dictatorship filmmaking.
Interesting.
He did. He said that while making Apocalypse Now.
He wasn't in a good headspace at that point. He wasn't in a real good headspace in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. I hope it's the last.
I don't have a problem with that. That was not a comment.
Yeah. I just wish, in the political sense, with the rise of authoritarian thinking everywhere, that if it was the last vestiges, I would sign up right now. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about that spilling outside the arts. The arts, I totally accept.
Exactly.
The society, not so much.
Yeah.
So you both have made films of coming of age and of youth, and youth kind of just kind of analyzing youth, and also not only youth, but specifically with you, Rick, that obviously over the passage of time. But I really want to kind of focus on youth because there are a lot of young filmmakers listening to this, and I've got some gray in my hair. Right here in my beard. So I've been around the block a little bit. You guys have been as well. There's something that you could only see when you look back at your youth. Why is it, and I'd love to hear your perspective of this, why is it that youth always assumes that the world is there for them, that everything is owed to them, and it should have gotten here yesterday? Like, because I remember when I was coming up, like, I'm like, why am I not in Hollywood already? Like, why haven't they given me $20 million already? Why is that happening?
I know.
The frontal lobe isn't fully formed yet. Isn't that the deal? I think it forms when they're 24, 25.
Is that, that's just science.
Yeah, I tell these film class, that I speak to, I said, it's going to take twice as, the world doesn't really reward your passion in the way that you put it out there. It's on its own time schedule. All you can do is try to outwork it, but it's going to take twice as long. It's like building a house or something. It's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. I said, it's going to require more of you than you think you even have to give, but that's not a bad thing. It's kind of like a long-term relationship or something. There's going to be a lot of effort you're going to put in you're not thinking about right now.
So Alex, are you talking about the characters we created in Boyhood and I Dream Too Much, or are you talking about youth in general? Like, because you guys have obviously studied and delved in those kind of characters a lot and explored youth and what it means to be young and the naivete of being young. And by the way, I wish I had some of my naivete back because you become very jaded as you get older, because you've just been around, so you just know things. But really great art is done by, Slacker, El Mariachi, Clerks. A bunch of, young filmmakers who just did it. She's Got to Have It. Like, they just went out and did it, not thinking about how you're going to sell it, where you're going to get your money back, how is this going to, build my career. There's none of that thought. So there is some power in youth, but it's hard to, it's like a wild stallion. It's hard to kind of guide it.
It's so interesting to be in the throes of that too. You're a little crazy. I remember the era that I was doing Slacker. My God, I think I was technically crazy in a way. You have to be obsessive crazy. You're risking everything, and you're kind of at this pitch of and there's no guarantees. You're risking everything, but you're so compelled to do it. And that's what the arts, it should be doing scary things that you're just compelled to do, and without any thought of what the results will be, other than
you have to bring yourself to the point where you cannot not tell the story. I mean, if going out to the lake and hanging out at the lake or going to the beach sounds so much nicer than sitting home alone in your room, you know, cultivating and picking at your psyche and trying to create characters in a certain story. I mean, if it has to be almost, not to sound hyperbolic or hyperbole, you know, it has to be as you breathe. I mean, it's got to be air, water, shelter, and you must get this story out, or else on a certain level, it just doesn't really make any sense. And having said that, I also recommend short films. Do as many short films as you can.
Yeah.
You know, I was inspired by music. I would just create little narratives to songs. I did, 30-second films. I did 3-minute films. I mean, my 10-minute film was like I was making Berlin Alexanderplatz. I mean, it was like...
I know the feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
To tell a story in 10 minutes. And, I think it really has to be something... It's got to be steps. I'm very much into steps. You don't skip things. You value where you're at, and you have to be okay with that. You might go see, so-and-so's biggest film that just came out. But when you come home, you got to bring it back down to what is it you want to say in the medium of film and how to say it, And I do think short films, for me, were always extremely liberating. We showed them in Austin. I mean, Raheel had her short film festival, and I would walk out there going, oh my gosh, I mean, with every, Bob Fosse film or Kubrick film, there was a Stan Brakhage film that made me feel just as happy, because it was an artist figuring it out, and just creating your own vision.
But isn't that like the greatest kind of films, when you're actually watching a film where you see the artist figuring it out, like literally as you're like, they didn't really know what they were doing here. They're just kind of like, oh, here they went over here and they went. And it's not only with film, you could do it with writing, with art, and any kind of art in general.
Just figuring it out. I mean, I felt like all of Wim Wenders' early films, he was figuring it out, and they're so beautiful and so spiritual. I mean, I go back to Alice in the City, Kings of the Road. I mean, I don't know, that is kind of the nature of cinema. It's a feeling thing. It's not a thinking thing.
To me, that feeling too, it's a question. The films are asking questions.
Yes.
That they're seeking answers, but they don't have an answer.
Absolutely.
The goal in making the film is the process of the question that they're trying to answer. It's not like, okay, I'm going to make this whole film to deliver you this answer I already have. They're quests.
They're
they're
quests.
Visual quests, and you can feel that, and I feel sorry for when that artist suddenly has answers.
Right.
And things start to change, little didacticism. And I hope that's not just with age, but that is kind of the great thing about youth, because you're just talking about youth in cinema. Youth, by definition, doesn't really have answers. It's being formed. And that's why I've come back to that over and over again. I mean, here recently, I've made definitely some middle-aged films, about that stage of life. But I think youth is always very, evocative. We were all young once, we're all still attached to that young, unformed person who's just figuring out the world, So I've done that a lot of just people searching for their own identities, or, you know, figuring out how the world works, you know. That's kind of a constant, you know.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just, you know, a quote that really literally hung above my computer while I was writing I Dream Too Much was, you know, when you're at sea, stay far from land, you know, because like you said, you know, when you're young, you have all these questions and you know, and looking back on this time where Dora's 20 years old, graduating college, one life is over and another hasn't formed. I really was trying to do like a love letter to that time, saying, just don't rush into anything. Don't want to know everything. Just be in that ditch. Be lost. As uncomfortable as it is, there really is so much there, you know. And I'm really sad when I see kids, you know, want everything to be fixed and done, you know, the minute they graduate and they're done, they've got their job, they're on, you know, it's like, oh my God, you're just headed for a midlife crisis, you know.
At 22, you're gonna have a midlife crisis.
Hey,
yeah, you see it though all the time. At that age, we just talked about, we're all impatient. We think we want tangible things from the world, that because we're passionate about it should be giving us this, and even know what you don't know, you know. I try to encourage young people. I said, it's all about the process. I mean, your whole 20s is going to be, just build that foundation under you, you know, read everything, watch everything, and work hard, and, you know, but
both of our characters, I think it's interesting, your character in Boyhood and my character in I Dream Too Much, essentially both turned to the arts. I mean, we're left with him in college with a camera, and Dora is just got up and read a poem.
Yeah, she wrote them.
And to both of us, it was the arts what created this inner freedom, which is extremely valuable. And I really can't emphasize it.
Yeah, you got to just make that leap with that. I made that, I think, even as a teenager. I said, well, I just really wanted my life to be full of literature and music, and it wasn't even movies yet. It's just the arts, thinking, life, expression. So once you kind of jump on that path, everything else is just a practical consideration. Like, how do I pay my rent? How do I raise money to make a movie? That I've picked an expensive medium. I wish I could just write a novel. I could afford that. Or paint, even painting. Oh, that requires supplies, and you know that can be expensive too. Canvases. It feels it when you don't have anything, but you know
that's the tension. You have to have tension. You have to have that tension, and that's.
I think another thing I've been talking about lately. I even talked to class and young people. I said, film really is, and I made a short film. Katie, did you?
Yeah, I saw it. I just saw it.
The one I did, the Pompidou, the 20-minute
Yep.
film.
No.
Yeah, the one with the therapist.
Yeah.
I saw it. I just saw it.
You saw it?
I saw it. I watched it. It's amazing. I was just sitting there going, this is awesome. And I could just tell you're just kind of like, at least the way from what I saw it, it's like Another Day at the Office. It's called Another Day at the Office or something. I think it's Another Day at the Office. And I'm watching it, and first of all, that conversation with the development execs or the whatever, that I'm just sitting there going, stakes. You got to lean into it. Yeah. All that stuff was great. But when you went in with the therapist and started talking to the therapist, I truly felt that you were working stuff out. Like that, at least from my point of view, I felt like you were.
It was so interesting at this point in my life. Like, seriously, that film is like the most personal thing imaginable. Katie, I'll give you the assignment. Like in the spring of the year before, the Pompidou had gotten in touch with me and said, next Thanksgiving, I looked at the calendar. They said, we want to do a retrospective, a complete retrospective of all your films and everything, but we want to fly you over. I said, would you bring my family over? And I asked, I have twin daughters too, Alex. I said, do you guys want to go to Paris next Thanksgiving? They're like, yeah.
You said that in the short. I know.
That's what I'm getting at. It's like, I made a choice in February, or no, it was even earlier. It's like, it's so far in the future. It'll be a little family vacation to Paris. Okay, I'll do it. Sure. That's kind of how you make your decisions at a certain point in life. And, but with that, they said, oh, and the director who does this, you have to make a short about where you are. It's where you are right now. And I saw some others, and they all did like little documentaries. So I put it off. It's like that term paper. I put it off. And then at the last minute, over that summer, I said, well, I started thinking about it. And I didn't do it. I actually wrote it. I wrote a script about where I really was at that moment, which was kind of in development hell on one project. And, with feedback that was annoying, my transcendentalist thing. And then a visit, because I had kind of been diagnosed informally for ADHD, which once I really got into that, it explained a lot of it explained me to myself to some degree.
Right.
I think filmmaking really is like being a director is kind of it's the territory for like, okay, let's go on the spectrum. ADHD, Asperger's, full-blown OCD. You do well. Those you can hang out in film because it's that.
I have ADHD.
Of course, I do.
You are able to sit and focus like I've never met.
That's one of the ADHD things is a deep, absolute focus on a very limited amount of things. Like,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I found out. Like I was a really mediocre student because my brain couldn't process. It was thinking. So
true.
Yeah, but I did have my one gift, and that's what came out in this therapy session. She goes, well, you took a test, and so I really just wrote it like a short. So I'm an actor in a movie. It's all scripted, but it looks like kind of a documentary.
But what I love about it, but what I love about it, Ray, let me interrupt you. But what I love about it is when you're talking to the studio execs, you're like feeding horses and doing stuff on the farm, and you have your earbuds on, and I'm just like, that's just so brilliant. It's so brilliant. Like with the one line, I think it was just the one line you said that just it just rang so true. One line that you said that they said to like, well, if that thing is not in there, I think it was something like, if that line's not in there, if that part is not in there, why no one's going to miss it.
We wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, and then you said, well, if we didn't make the movie, no one would miss it either, which was just the best comeback line ever. I was like, yes.
That's so great.
I'm stealing that in the next meeting I have with studio execs. I'm like, that's amazing.
That's kind of like...
I've been sitting on that line for a while. Where did you see that? Did you go on the Pompidou website?
No, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Okay, Katie, you can watch it.
I'll send you a link.
I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh, so much fun.
20 minutes short. I felt great because, before I made a couple features, I made about 20 shorts.
Yeah.
For when my first short got over, I made a 15-minute. No, it was like a 17-minute epic. I was like, oh my God, it took me 6 months. It was like, oh. Yeah, so it's a little intimidating because you're like, your head's in the clouds with the greatest films ever made, but you do.
Yeah.
Filmmaking absolutely necessitates you pull your head out of the clouds and out of your own ass and focus on the reality in front of you. Like, okay, here's who I am. Here's what I got. How do I work from here? That's all you can do. And people who can't do it are the ones whose brains are just too far ahead of themselves and not accepting. And also accepting it's a real craft. It takes a long time to kind of you can have these flashes of, it just takes a long time for your skills to catch up with your ideas, put it like that.
Oh, that is, I could not have put it more perfectly.
Yeah.
Because when I walked into film school, I went to a film school in Orlando, and I walked onto a set and I had like shots and things laid out because I'd been studying Scorsese and Kubrick, and I had all these like no cut takes and everything. I had no idea how to do any of this. None,
Right.
none what's. You just know. I didn't even understand it, but my ideas were so. Even to this day, I have ideas that cost lots and lots of money. I have a little bit better understanding of how to do it, but you really, when you're young, your ideas are so far ahead of your skill set. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, bring it back to reality. That's always the challenge. But I admire the guys who, can create this unreality and get it. The Kubricks are the fantastic.
But he never made Napoleon.
No, he sure
But
didn't.
he didn't make Napoleon. He didn't make what is it, the papers.
Yeah, so many people. It's a frustrating thing. Remember, Antonioni wrote that book in the last, I guess, 15 years of his long life. It was called Bowling Alley on the Tiber, and it was all the films he's never going to make, just like a page or these ideas. And I have a book of those myself, but it's important to probably not make every film that crosses your mind. But it's great if the film that crossed your mind is still in your mind 10 years later, 20 years later. Maybe you should pursue that.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, I do give certain ideas a test of time, and if it's still kind of gnawing, then you got to kind of start putting it down in paper and bringing it down.
But that's because there's different kind of filmmakers, though.
Yeah.
Someone like we mentioned Kubrick numerous times. He didn't do that. He was looking for a great narrative out in the world because he himself. It's a different skill set to create a great character out of scratch, to create a great story. He talked about a great cinematic story is like a pop song. It's a really rare thing, and you only hard to like a pop hit. It's really hard. So he was looking for that narrative that he probably on his own, blank slate, not his skill set. That's not his brain works.
Yeah.
He's stories. That doesn't mean you're not a great, so there's a kind of filmmaker who's working super close to home in a personal way, characters coming out of their own lives. A lot of people don't do that. They're really thinking the form. Kubrick wanted to make a science fiction movie that didn't suck, about space travel. That's where he started. He started with genre and the form, and he just knew he had something in him. So, and that's really valid. So many great filmmakers work that direction. I think the indie world, by nature, we all work the other direction.
Well, you work more like Fassbinder, where Fassbinder wanted to make sure that what he experienced actually did experience the emotion of it. So then he would, create from there.
Now, I wanted to touch something about both of your films. Your film, I Dream Too Much, and kind of a bunch of your films in your filmography, Rick. The spiritual aspect of your projects and your characters and the journeys that they make, the spiritual, philosophical too. I mean, obviously, the first scene in Slacker with you spouting off philosophy, pretty much set the tone for your career in so many ways. But the spiritual aspect of things, I'd love to hear because I see, and this is just my interpretation of the art. I see it in both your work, a spiritual undertone in it. Is that something that you are placing in it purposefully, or are you kind of organically, it just comes out of the characters? Because there's definitely something there, and majority of your work, Rick, and as well as yours, Katie.
I was always kind of obsessed, or naturally I fell in with the what Schrader calls the transcendental, style in film. The Ozus, Bresson, Dreyer, Mizoguchi, you Bergman, Tarkovsky, the people who had these kind of spiritual concerns. And you see it in it's in a lot, it shows up in American cinema plenty too. It's just usually, it's around the edges of narratives often. It's not the sole subject. But I think it just kind of, if you think film is kind of a spiritual art on some level. That sounds kind of pretentious, but I don't know, when you're talking about life and representing, I don't know, the world, and I think that's there, but I never had anything I really wanted to say on that front. I really don't. I don't have any practice or anything. I think it's just what's on the mind of young people and how they communicate and what they're going through, or maybe there's some magical thinking sometimes that, particularly at certain points in your life, and I felt myself change, like I go back even 20 years, I wouldn't be making Waking Life today, probably because I just think differently about certain things. I'm more skeptical. I'm more science-based. I kind of had these ideas, or I think I used to be a little more into just the pure aesthetic of ideas. You see it a lot in Slacker. The conspiracy thinking, the kind of, I'm just calling them magical ideas, not that they're that necessarily, but just alternative ways of thinking, let's say. Mm-hmm. That really interested me a lot. I felt that was very real in the world. It was a certain kind of buzz of the world I was experiencing. And you could say it's kind of schizophrenic, it's kind of crazy, but I thought, well, that's the world, that's what I'm feeling. But that was a certain age, and I don't know, you kind of see it play out in the public arena, like say conspiracy, for instance. And that's taken on a real malevolent, I think, super damaging, where it was kind of fun in the 80s to talk about, some of this stuff. I don't know. I just think when it's kind of the ideology now of a large percentage of our population, what I want now is like, I don't know. I want like us to be on the same page. I want there to be like actual deeper thinking and factual, but I don't think that affects the film so much, but it's just, I don't know. Certain flights of fancy, maybe not so much.
Got it. How about you, Katie?
Well, I think it sort of circles back to what we were talking about the question, the filmmakers who are seeking questions. And to me, that's spiritual, and Rick, you were very, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and Knut Hamsun, these were all writers that were very much alive to you and inspired you. And they certainly, come from a very spiritual place. I think of a film, like you said, Tender Mercies, where there is, Horton Foote was going after something else. But as Bresson says, keep the important stuff hidden. you know? And I wonder, through that tension of telling a story, but trying to connect it to something greater and something that we could all participate in, does sort of make it something a little bit more spiritual. I don't know.
To me, Boyhood, like it's a commentary on the human condition. I mean, there's no question, and about the journey of this soul, this boy going through life, and also not only that, the parents. As you get older, I watched it when it first came out, and then now as a father of older children, you just are like, I feel it different, and that's what good art does. It changes with you as you get older. But there is, I guess anytime you're dealing with the human condition, there's, in many ways, you touch the spiritual in some way, or another, without being like, I'm not talking about religion or anything like that. I'm just talking about just the human condition.
I know. I think we're all looking for connection. That's what makes cinema such a powerful medium, because you can really, the spirit kind of permeates the images sometimes. It really does. If you're not too didactic about it, you lay it out there and we're all feeling, wanting to connect, In a film like Boyhood, I was kind of amazed, but on the other hand, I wasn't. It's sort of what I was going for, but the way people did connect to it. Even all those years I was thinking, like, am I not going? I'm not going very big here. I'm making it about this minutia of life.
Right.
I'm not even doing the first kiss. I'm making it the little things I remember and just the smallest things. But I had a great belief in the cumulative power of that, of time, and what that would maybe just feel like as a human to experience watching it, like just to see life, to see time move like that. That's what I thought would be interesting. I didn't want to weigh it down with a lot of heaviness. I mean, it's plenty heavy. It's got a lot of detail that runs the gamut. But I just thought the physical process, I did kind of think it would be this kind of moving thing. So it was amazing to me to get the feedback from people saying what they liked about it. And it was unique it was very similar every time. It's like, oh, my parents divorced, or, my kid went off to college, or I just went off to college, or, it was always some detail from the film triggered so much from their own life. So I got to hear so many people's life stories, or, what they connected. And I said, oh, that's really beautiful that people are just connecting with some aspect. But every film, you go for that. The thing is with Boyhood, it was an overabundance of it, because that's all there was. So I got back an overabundance. But I like a film if I can just, if there's a couple of scenes that take it to that level that you just get a rush of feelings. You think maybe the whole movie moved up was for that one moment,
right?
Look on someone's face, or just the contemplation of something. But it's going to be different for, you just got to leave some room for it. But it's really just how you got to give the power to the medium we're in. You have to acknowledge the power of cinema and work with that. You don't have to, it carries so much itself. You just have to work with it, I think.
And then also, Katie, in your film, I Dream Too Much, the grandma character, and so many characters in your films as well, Rick, I find that, human beings as we are, we constantly are carrying our past with us. And it completely determines our future. We're unique as an animal species on this planet. We're the only ones that do that. I mean, there's not many dogs who are carrying around their past and really affecting their future so much. Why do you think we do that to our detriment? Like, we know consciously it's hurting us, but yet we still kind of thrive in it. And I know a lot of characters in your films do that because that's the human condition. I'd just love to hear your take on that.
Well, I mean, it's funny having just watched the Ken Burns, Ernest Hemingway series that was on. It reminded me how Aunt Vera, I created her in honor of, Hadley Hemingway or Martha Gellhorn, one of the married to the great journalist, and she gets cast aside for a younger woman, and they fake their death. And, I completely forgot about that, and how Vera holds on to it. It becomes like her reason of being, and Dora kind of lands into this world, and they both figure it out. But so you're asking
Why
we
do it as a species? People hold on to things. Yeah,
a wound is sacred. I mean, you feel it takes you out of the ordinary.
But to our detriment, not like hold on to the past, like the good stuff, but like we have things that like we hold on to that constantly are hurting us and hurting our forward motion completely. I've done that in my life where an incident happens and you just hang on to it and it stops you from going anywhere. Why?
Well, I think you create a narrative.
Absolutely.
The minute you have a trauma, then you form a narrative around it, and then, you create to live up to that narrative. That's who you are, and you create it until you sit down and write a script about it.
Yeah, but it's a choice. It seems like we're in some therapy session, but yeah, that narrative is: are you the hero overcoming great odds,
right?
Sing through all the muck that's been thrown at you, or are you the victim who's held back by these traumatic? It's like you can. We do have, to some degree, where we put it, in our compartments. You can hide it away completely. You can deal with it. You can, my sister said watching Boyhood, it's like, oh, we went to therapy. You made a movie. It's like,
yeah. That's what I said. Or you can just
our own upbringing. It's like, I was had an allergic thing to therapy, but I wanted to deal with some of this somehow. So again, the art solves all problems. It really does.
It's therapy.
Right.
That's why
art is therapy.
What about religion? I said, all the great things that are in the great holy books, I said, all that exists in the arts and science. If you really focus on arts and science, all the questions are there, so many answers are there, and all the beautiful mystical feelings are there. It's been expressed throughout time. It's so much there. If religion's not doing it for you, and you have this other thing, it's really tangible. So I really do believe in the arts as a sort of church. It will provide all meaning and context and myth and whatever you're questing for, it's all there,
Well, even Bresson quotes the liturgy in his notes on cinematography. I'm Greek Orthodox, and the liturgy on Sunday was supposed to do what art does. You get the whole operatic vision in front of you for an hour and a half. You're supposed to walk out going, I feel so much better. But now I think art is now, that taking over that.
Uh-oh. Oh, no, he didn't. He just busted it out.
Did you get a first edition?
Signed. Look at you. You see?
All right.
Now you're just bragging.
Now you're just mean.
Now you're just bragging, Rick. Look at that with a little personal card. Letter of authenticity.
Yeah, it was a gift. It was a gift someone gave me.
That's awesome.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
I had it right here on my shelf. I thought
St. Robert.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'll have to bust out my George Lucas autograph and my Kira Kurosawa as well. So
I've got my Lindsay Anderson. He autographed my John Ford book he wrote.
Oh, that's amazing.
I don't know where it is though.
One thing you said.
I think of Lindsay.
Huh?
No, I'm sorry.
No, I think of Lindsay quite a bit, and I carry the torch for him. Lindsay Anderson. My daughters have recently become very cinema literate. Just finally, the pandemic put us together in a theater once a day to watch a movie. What are we watching tonight? Before, I thought I'd lost them to, YouTube, all the other things that kids are distracted by. But they finally kind of got cinema, and we watched so many movies. But their favorite film, and these are kids who just turned 16, was If, and then the whole Mick Travis trilogy. Going back and revisiting those was really profound, truly radical, beautiful movies. I just admire him so much, and we were lucky to have hung out with him.
Yeah, the sporting life is not be shown enough.
We watched that. And did you see Malcolm McDowell's No Apologies, his documentary about Lindsay? Malcolm McDowell did this one-man show. It's just him on stage with slides and images, and it's really all about Lindsay, his relation with Lindsay and his own career. But it's beautiful. You can get it on Vudu. You can rent it on Vudu. Just No Apologies.
Okay.
Malcolm McDowell's tribute to Lindsay Anderson. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, from to a mentor and a great artist, from a guy whose life he affected profoundly, who loved him dearly and kind of saw the contradictions and frustrations Lindsay went through personally, professionally. It's great. It's a great portrait.
That's wonderful.
One thing that you said earlier, Rick, you said that it's going to take twice as long and you're going to work twice as hard than you think, which is a great quote. Can you just dig a little deeper into the patience?
And you're gonna. There's one more thing. And if it's meant to be, you're going to love every minute of it,
Yeah, oh my God, that's amazing. That's a great addition to that quote.
Because you're doing what you love in this life. You're serving your cinematic, destiny. I look back at those years where I would just tape the windows. I blacken my windows and edit around the clock for just days and days just to finish that short that no one was ever going to see. But I was like, what was driving me? I wasn't a good boyfriend. I didn't go do anything. People would ask me out for dinner. I'd like, no, there's a film I'm watching at 7:30 and then I'm dead. And I just didn't have time. I was so obsessed and on a track, and I look back at those were kind of like the greatest years ever because it was something pure about just doing exactly what you wanted to do with your time. And when you're fully dedicated to something like cinema, which is so multifaceted, for me that meant, starting a film society. It was booking films, but it was watching films. It was seeing every film. It was editing. It was writing film. You can really dedicate your life to this if you see it just, especially outside just your own thing. It's a bigger, cinema's much bigger than all of us, so there's a lot to contribute to. So it really can be a life.
It's a call.
Whatever it gives you back, it's like what you put in, it's kind of like sports, you get back what you put in. And
I don't know. I think cinema is so heartbreaking.
Oh yeah,
but there's that.
It is incredibly heartbreaking.
Well, so is sports. You give it, you live it. It's like I was just saying, things that the athlete or the artist devotes their life to, I think they're by definition heartbreaking. I mean, you talk to these people who have successful, you would look at it and go, oh, that's a successful career. And you get a little closer and there's a lot of heartbreak there, a lot of disappointment, it's just how you categorize it, Well,
I mean it's. Well, but with both of you, I'm sure. I mean, I know, Rick, you've obviously had some highs, but you've also had lows. And even to this day, you're still hustling to get your movies made. And that's the thing that young filmmakers think that like, oh, it's Rick Linklater. He's this and that. And as I talk to more and more filmmakers that are accomplished filmmakers, I completely understand that like, no, man, I still am hustling for the money. I'm still trying to get my projects made. Like, it's not like they just, oh, well, you got nominated for an Oscar. Well, here's how many $20 million checks do you want? Like, it doesn't work that way.
Really?
It's amazing. Yeah. People, when they think like, oh, you have trouble. I was like, well, I'm having trouble getting this particular thing made. Maybe it's, I don't know, not fitting into the marketplace, but yeah, it's there's no easy path. Although I do think certain friends of mine or certain people I know, I think they're pretty made, they get to do whatever they want, but I look at them and go, well, they kind of earn that, in a way I haven't. So I'm like, okay, I'm not complaining, you're on the roster, but yeah.
Look, Scorsese's still having trouble. I mean, Spielberg couldn't even get Lincoln financed. So, I mean, there is moments that, they still got to hustle.
Yeah. Oh, well, he got it financed eventually. It's just they're so affronted by the initial
fear
that the world gives you. Like, I remember when he took Schindler's List into Universal, I guess it was, and the head of the studio, can't we just make a donation to some Holocaust thing?
Oh my God.
And that's the kind of thing someone like Spielberg, you don't forget that. And that didn't mean it didn't happen, but it's that initial, the world gives you, no matter what you say, it gives you a little stiff arm back.
So could we just
it's a smart comment or it's something, but you're not supposed to feel sorry for those people. You're just supposed to know the world doesn't necessarily want to give you everything you want,
Well, even between Slacker coming out in 91, which I think this is 2021. Isn't this an anniversary?
Is it 30 year?
We're in between our Austin premiere 30 year and our national will be, next summer or this coming summer.
Between Slacker, and then with my first film, Portrait of a Girl as a Young Cat, which came out in 2000, I was hearing from independent, distributors and festivals, well, do you have any names attached to it?
Yeah.
So this independent became Indiewood, that it became commodified where you needed, names to get it out there. So it's just this constant like flux of, what can we sell? What can we sell?
Yeah. That is the kind of the shadow side of what we were kind of rhapsodizing about the Sundance era, indie, this renaissance. What went with that is commercial expectations and this amped up industry, minor league system with names attached for no money. Yeah. So there was always been that, there's kind of an inflation that ran through it all that kind of, you could say like Miramax sort of ruined Miramax and then later Fox Searchlight when they kind of landed on these formulas. And this is just pure business. But, it was really kind of insidious. It's like how they made money and they worked a formula that they would just overspend. They'd over advertise, build up grosses, and then take their cut and then have it all just stop right at the point they're supposed to pay the filmmakers. Right at the point it was going to achieve, they were taking their fee off the top. So I was like, wow, what a kind of businessy awful formula that started working. And then it wasn't enough to, Slacker, they gave us $100,000 in advance. It made $1.3 million at the box office. It was seen as successful. They made some money. That was okay. It was if the sports tournament, they were hitting singles and doubles. That's okay. But it became a much bigger thing, and everyone started sort of playing that game. So, you just got to deal with inflationary time, inflationary expectations, And
if Slacker comes out today, it's drowned out. Do you agree? What do you
I'm
think?
of two minds. Part of me says yes. It wouldn't get into the narrative competition at Sundance. It would definitely be a midnight or at best. You think that, but then I also go, well, there's still room for that film that is so weirdly different to find a path. So part of me, the optimist in me, has to believe that it would find a way the way it did then. It was just a different film. It didn't have a story. There was so much it wasn't, but what it was. But it's a product of its time too. It's very much, in a way, it spoke to a moment in time.
Yeah.
The agenda was cinematic, but it kind of, not that it was a design of the film, but like anything that just kind of catches a zeitgeistier pop culture wave, that's just luck. And I think that's just that's kind of the upside of naive youth. Like, you don't know it, but you're surfing on some waves that are in the culture that are youthful and different, and so that's what music does so well.
Now, you guys worked on a project together, I Dream Too Much, which was directed and written by Katie. So, Katie, can you tell us a little bit about that project, and then how did Rick get involved in that project?
Let's see. I had done Portrait of a Girl as a Young Cat that came out in 2000, and then
great. By the way, great title. Not as much as stuffing the bikini title that we talked about earlier. Not that good, but still good.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to recommend to listeners out there that a good title really helps you write every day, and something that you don't know what it is. Like, I really didn't know what a Portrait of a Girl as a Young Cat was while I wrote it. So it was something to write towards. And the same with I Dream Too Much. I didn't really know what that meant. So it really helped sitting down and creating these characters and creating a plot to do. With I Dream Too Much, I really wanted to capture, like I had mentioned earlier, that time right after college, when you're done with college and your life hasn't begun yet. And so you're moving away from one life, but nothing's been created yet. So I always saw my character Dora as sort of in a ditch throughout the writing, just not sure where she was going. Her last name was Wells, by the way. It also helps because I thought about Orson Welles every time I sat down, in good ways and bad ways. So she wants to travel. She wants to go to Brazil. She's just graduated, and her mom wants her to go to law school, which that was me, graduating from college. My dad wanted me to go to law school. So it was a little personal. Dora takes off, goes upstate New York. We shot in upstate New York over 3 weeks during one of the snowiest times ever, February of 2014. So I made my Dr. Zhivago movie too. And so, she goes to live with her Aunt Vera, and she, through the story, by the end, she sort of decides what she doesn't want to do, but maybe what she might want to do. There were no, unlike Portrait, which was very much influenced by Jacques Demy and Godard, like Viva sa vie. I Dream Too Much. I really didn't think about any other films. There weren't a lot of coming of age with female character films I could really go to. So I looked at Jane Austen. Right. So at a certain point, I realized I really wanted to write a story as if Jane Austen lived in 2014. So it very much draws upon the themes of the poor relation, going to live with the wealthy relation. It's a lot of walking in landscapes. And there's even a running thread throughout it where she actually sort of daydreams that she's in a Jane Austen movie. So anyway, it was really fun. Like I said, it was definitely like this love letter to that time in your life where things are open, but there is a little bit of anxiety too. So.
And then Rick, and Rick, you've never, if I'm not, you've never EP'd a film before. You never executive produced a film like that, or have you?
Some docs,
right,
and other things, but I don't think a narrative. I don't think I had. No.
So how did you get involved with the project?
Well, as I remember, Katie, like only a year or two before, you had a different one. The girl
vanishes. Yeah, the screwball comedy.
That's what you were sort of going on that, and then you did a segue into this.
Yeah.
Okay, all your energy went there. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. And I just love the script. I love what it was about. Like I love that territory. Obviously, I've done it from kind of a male point of view, let's say. I just think it's young female, that thing is woefully underrepresented. So I thought, oh, wow. And you're the one to do it because I know it was so alive with you, so personal.
Yeah.
Just knowing that law school tension and that the parental and all that. I just thought it was beautiful. And I just loved your cast too. When you got Eden and Diane Ladd, they're just so perfect. I just thought you did a great job. So it was just fun to see you get that chance, So I didn't really do anything, but I came and visited and I was there,
Well, no, I mean, having your name attached absolutely helped us navigate and get going.
That's why I don't do it casually. I wouldn't just. Yeah, I only did it on something I truly believed in, and would if called, I would answer. It wasn't.
And Alex, when I was writing the script early on, I kept thinking, "Oh, Rick is really going to like this story," because it had a lot of ideas working out, and talking, and it had a, I did have him in the back of my mind when I was writing it. And Diane was really fun to work with. I have to say, when we first met her in California, she lives out in Ojai. We had lunch. I was with my two producers, Jay and Jack, and we sit down for lunch, and she all of a sudden starts telling me a story about working with Tennessee Williams and how and I told Tennessee, he needs to change this ending. And he did. And I thought, oh my God.
Amazing.
I nearly, things coming up. I was like, oh my God, she's telling Tennessee Williams how to write. What is going to be?
What you get into, because if she can get Tennessee Williams, what's she going to say? Actors are all that first meeting you're setting a relationship tone. You got to be careful.
Oh my God. It was, that was very telling. I mean, she had great stories about working. Alice doesn't live here anymore. She told Scorsese that he needed another shot of Ellen Burstyn in some scene, and working with David Lynch on Wild at Heart, and working on Chinatown, and she's so great to work with. But that initial meeting, I mean, Tennessee Williams, not the iguana. Oh my God.
I think what she's telling you, it's a good lesson, is that writers, directors, you have a lot to learn and a lot to benefit from listening to the people who are physically manifesting your ideas via acting in your movie.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of them have run into younger directors who who think, oh, what I wrote a year ago is perfect. I don't want you messing it up. And it's like, no, if you really want to, it's a collaboration. I think they're kind of telling them, actually, the best directors listen very closely to who they're working with, and those so much. That next level, getting it to that, that level comes from that collaboration. So she's just
absolutely. That is the best. I mean, if it's all in the script, why make the movie? You have to have that actor, the input. You have to take it to a whole other level.
And it's also the lightning that you're going to capture on set. Like, there's that lightning in a bottle that you have to be prepared for.
Yeah, you got to leave room for it.
Yeah,
you got you're leaving, that 7% or that 10% or whatever. I'm a big rehearser, and I sometimes make actors nervous or going in. Rehearsing, is it going to be like acting exercises? Are they going to be laying down on the floor, recalling? It's like I said, my rehearsals are actually my rewriting. I do it for me. I want to hear you say it, and I want to talk about it. I want to answer all your questions. I want to have new ideas.
Right.
Now, this is a process for me. I'm still discovering this movie. I'm not 100% sure yet how I'm going to shoot it. I'm feeling my way through this.
No, I think that's great. And I sort of did one of these, as God is my witness. I will never make a movie where I don't get rehearsal, because I got no rehearsal time with my actors. And we were shooting 5 pages a day. And I just, I just would have loved just to have a few days because I don't want to hear my writing back. I want them to, and it was great. One time Danielle Brooks, in a scene, she just came up to me. She's like, I don't get it. I don't buy it. You have to rewrite it. I was like, great. So I had to rewrite this whole scene, and it made it so much better. That's what I live for. Totally.
Yeah, I try to do that weeks before production.
I know. Well, like I said, on my next film, a week of rehearsal.
Early on, someone told me it's like for every week of rehearsal, you save a day of production.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rich formula, because a day of production is expensive and a day of rehearsal costs very little.
Right.
You get these bureaucrats who they just want to keep actors away until they're necessary. Like, oh no, they're going to come in and need things for 2-3 weeks. Like, yeah, a hotel room. It's really expensive.
Food.
Your budget. Yeah, it's just they live here and we're going to work and we're going to make a better movie.
I am so glad to hear you say this. I mean, I knew you. Yeah. I knew you, but I don't. This next film.
I have the insecure director, and my nightmare that I dream. Probably every 6 months, I have this dream where I'm on my own set. Shooting, and I'm meeting actors for the first time. I don't know them. I don't know who they are. And we're trying to work together. And then pretty soon I realize, I don't even know my own movie. Like, what's this script? I'm just lost.
That's 8.5 of you. That's
I watched that again recently. The new Criterion, beautiful.
Obviously.
But it is that kind of fear of just not being prepared. But for me, that's a comfortableness with the cast that I want them to be comfortable and I want to be comfortable.
So Rick, when you do get rehearsal, because this film my script I'm working on now is more of an ensemble, like a family ensemble piece. So when you do get rehearsal, do you find you don't have to talk as much on the set to the actors? I mean, you don't have to, because they walk in, they're like, okay.
We're doing that scene we worked on. And ideally, if you can do it in pre-production, if you have the locations, I like to have blocked it on the set before.
Right.
So you're not spending the morning while the crew's waiting around figuring out, then you walk through that door. I'm figuring out with the geography.
Right.
Do all that. I've been in a position plenty where I'm in rehearsals and then I have to go to the set separately, but if you can get the actors there, and then kind of just then they're that much more comfortable that they're like, let's go. So I'm a big rehearse on location.
Yeah, the location. Wow, that's a whole other
hang out with no clock ticking. Let's just hang out on the weekend, talk about it, and feel our way through it. It's really processed, very organic, and it just makes everybody more relaxed, a little more confident.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, the location changes everything too. Just like Antonio.
You have new ideas, like it's these words you're hearing out loud for the first time via the person who's going to say it. And then these locations you found, let's say in the last couple months or recently. And, you're kind of putting those together. And that's really like how you're going to shoot it, how you're going to, you're just feeling your way through your own movie. And that's okay. And I wish people would respect that. What they ask of directors is to answer questions. And I get it. You have to answer questions all day long. And as Truffaut says in Day for Night, sometimes I even have the right answer. I even know the answer. But, they need, and I learned early on to not be vague because, it's people don't want to hear that from the boss that, I'm feeling my way through, If you're managing a restaurant, like, hey, do we like, I don't know, man. You're like, no, we want to, people who are working for people, they want answers. So I learned early on, have those answers, but also have the right to change your mind. If you can be with the locations person asks you, hey, you need to park the trucks here. You're going to see there. And, okay, we won't see out that window. So you can park there, whatever. Just to the best of your ability, answer their question, but then also say, then a few times in the production, you'll go up and, hey, you know what I told you the other day? It's changed. They'll respect it because you gave them 97 answers and 3 times you changed it. Well, who they really hate is the person who gave them 0 answers.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can say, hey, I'm going to give you, I'm process oriented. Things change. I'm looking for it to change a little. But if we were shooting today, you can park the trucks there and here. But so plan on that. I will let you know the second that when and if that changes. You got to run efficient, but they have to. You need everyone to buy into your process, And there's a million. It took me a few films to get that buy-in. It's nothing but like, here you're working with a lot of professionals. Here's how we do it. Here's how we make a movie. And it's like, well, that's not how I want to. That's not going to make my movie. I'll accept, the parameters of a schedule, a budget, a call sheet, overtime, meal penalties. That's all bad enough. But don't tell me I can't rehearse because the actors are professionals and will come in and say their line. Don't tell me things like that. They don't need to rehearse or whatever.
So guys, I'm good.
You gotta fight day for night too is when that guy comes up to him and is like, "Why aren't you doing a movie about pollution? And why there's more sex? You need more sex, more pollution. Pollution is something we need to deal with." And it's like, yes, right? I mean, those questions will never go away. On the set. Why aren't you, and the Godfather is playing around the corner and, it is. It's like he says, it's you get on a stagecoach and then you take off and you have no idea if you're going to make it.
And the bottom line is everybody on set knows that they can make a better film than you. Everybody knows that they can make a better film than you.
Well, you certainly do your first 2 or 3 films.
Yeah. Afterwards, you hopefully have some sort of respect.
I've enjoyed making it to elder cinematic stage. The upside of that is that, those first 3 films, the natural thing in an employee situation is the emperor has no clothes, right? They have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea. They're totally faking it.
Obviously.
And that was, even my 3rd film, Days, that was the vibe at the studio. Oh, this guy's a complete amateur. He has no idea what he's doing, and he's doing it all wrong. And I could be doing better. That was all there. That slowly started to get away. They might not like what I'm doing, but they couldn't say I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And I couldn't say, because frankly, there was a lot I didn't know.
Right.
You leave yourself vulnerable. So at some point, I was happy to get there. You can disagree or not but just don't tell me I don't know what I'm doing,
Right.
My joke is, when they ask some obvious question I was like, oh, this only seems like my first film, but it's actually my
21st.
You go this might seem like my first film. I had to tell Shirley MacLaine that, well, do you have wardrobe? I mean, she challenges, in a way. In pre-production, Shirley, this isn't Universal. This is an indie film. We don't have any money. We're 8 weeks out. Haven't even started in the costume department. We don't have, I don't have Edith Head coming over to do costumes. This is an indie film, but just don't tell me I don't know what I'm doing, because this is my, 13th, 14th film, whatever. So you just have to kind of give everybody, their comfort zone or their assurance. It's not going to be wasted,
God, as a director, there's so many skill sets that they don't tell you about, the politics of a set, being the politics and human relationships and and the psychology of it all. All they teach you is this is the lens that Kubrick used. Now this is how Scorsese got that shot in Goodfellas. That's fantastic.
That's
but when you get on set, that perfect example of Shirley MacLaine, when you run up against the wall, like Shirley, who worked with Hitchcock among a million other people that she worked with.
Everyone we've talked about.
Right, exactly. You just go. They don't teach you that. That's something you learn on the job.
Again, I did that 8 weeks before production started or so in a hotel room in LA. We got that done. So by the time we were on set, it's smooth. Everything's great. We're making the same movie. We had rehearsed. We had, things were good.
Yeah, but she didn't have any respect for Vincent Minnelli, so I think you're in really good company, right? Well, did she say all he cared about was the color of the curtains or something?
Yeah, or Hal Ashby was hot. I realized, some people.
Yeah, you're in good company.
Have good, that's what she ended up telling me.
What did you think of how Howard talked?
I don't know for her, because
she was Bill Wilder. Yeah.
She was like, well, do you want this or this? I said, well, I don't know, Shirley. Which one do you think you're? She said, there you go. I don't know. I said, I said, I don't, when they're confronting me with something, my first thing I said, I don't know. I mean, everyone else in East Texas has I said, listen very carefully to what I say right after I say I don't know. And I'm probably telling you what I think. But I'm also leaving the possibility that you might have an idea of your own that you want to bring in here and collaborate with.
Which is scary for a certain generation of actors. Like they just want to just like tell us where to go. It happens. I've worked with some actors like that too, with an older generation and very established, and you work with them and they have a way of doing things that they would just.
Would Billy Wilder like show exactly, or am I thinking of Lubitsch, where they would just exactly what they wanted, they would act it out.
I'd imagine Billy Wilder wasn't a very loosey-goosey. No, I don't think Billy Wilder was very loosey-goosey.
I'm thinking of Lubitsch then. That would just totally act it out. This is exactly what I want you to do, and do it.
It's like worse than a line reading.
That'll, yeah.
But for some actors, maybe that works. See, I get, as not shy as I am, I get really shy around actors. So I need to work on that. That's my thing. Probably Eden and Diane and Danielle would say that's not true, but
they smell fear. They smell fear. They smell fear.
Huh? Yeah.
I really like you. I thought you were giving them a lot. I love the way you worked with the actors and the vibe on your set.
Good. That means a lot.
And stuff. But yeah, that is true. You said actors smell fear. But that's why I was always in acting class, and I was always kind of became an actor myself. Not that I ever wanted to be an actor, but I thought, I want to be able to relate. At least it's good to know enough to know how hard it is. What they're doing, so
hard.
So you come from a place of appreciation,
empathy,
of what acting is, and empathy of how difficult it is, and you're just, they sense you're on their side.
Right.
There's a reason in sports, most coaches, they always have played. They know what you're up against. They know the situations you're in. So wouldn't it make sense for a director to have played the positions before or been in that game? So it kind of makes sense. I tell students and people like, go get in an acting class. Get up in front of 20 people, give a 5-minute or 3-minute monologue, show your ass of how you're not good, and live with it and get better and be embarrassed. And because that's what they're doing for your camera, and they're you're asking a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And because actors, they can smell it, like, are you on my side, or do I have to work around you?
Do I have to protect myself? Do I have to protect myself?
Yeah. You see, and it really calcifies careers. You see these actors who, they go through a long career and they've been burned. They believed in a director who told them to do something. They see the movie and that's stupid. Why do I look so dumb? Because I listened to that idiot telling me to. And they don't like what they did. So they're like, okay, I'm not going to, what am I going to give? I'll only give so much of myself, or I'm not going to go outside. Don't tell me how to act because I've already got all that down.
Right.
So you see really good actors they're not really finding any new notes in their careers. They're just being good over and over in the kind of the same way. But, the best actors, the ones who really push themselves, the ones we're still talking about, they'll be working with a first-time director, and they're so confident actually in their own abilities. They're like, they know the film's only going to be good if they're good, so they want to help you be good. They're not in opposition. They don't want a lackey director who just, they really want a director to, I think the best player would like the best coach. That's the way you're going to win.
Right, absolutely.
I tell you what's heartbreaking. I just finished reading a biography on Clark Gable, and to hear his experience on The Misfits, and he would get the set on time, he was ready to go, and everybody would just sort of trickle in, and it really killed him.
And Marilyn was late.
Marilyn, John was late. He would just be like, what type of filmmaking is this? And it's just, it's to end the book, he's like 60 years old, and this is, after everything he's gone through, and it was really interesting. I never saw it from that perspective, I guess. An actor who was prepared, ready, and was just getting, it was just such an awful experience.
Well, actors, you do enough films, you're going to have some really weird experiences based on the people you're working with and the circumstances they're in.
Right.
I mean, it's like, yeah, what's his quote? Like a week or so before he died of a heart attack, he talked about misfits. Like Marilyn said, she likes to give. She gave me a heart. I thought she was going to give me a heart attack. Well, she did, maybe. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just,
So guys, this has been an amazing conversation. I have a few questions. I mean, I could go on for another 3 hours, but I'm going to give you a few rapid fire questions that I ask all my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
I would say don't focus on the business so much. Focus on your own getting good. The business will come. Yeah, don't be too business oriented. How about that? Think about just what you're doing and make it really good, and then I don't know. Is that dumb?
No, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Around when it does, but don't. I see these grad students that are really worried about getting that first film. It's like, you're so far away from that. Just perfect your own mechanism. How about before you're thinking about your career? I would say don't think in career terms or business terms.
Well, no, I mean, wasn't it Tarkovsky who said, this isn't a career, this is a cause.
Yeah.
This is
it's a calling.
Mean, and it's a calling. And if you look at it from, I think perspective is very important. We don't need another director making action, action hero, whatever movies. We need more personal visions. And I think that's what came out in that great book about Chinatown. It was like one of the last times that, there was a personal vision that was brought to the screen. So that's my advice. And like we said earlier, short films, just keep figuring out what you want to say about life. And if you don't have anything to say yet, then get a diary. And write.
Yeah,
and go do something. You don't have to go to Africa and go on a safari like Hemingway or, but put yourself out there, feel, and so you'll have something. I mean, for me, for a long time, I just didn't have anything to say, and that takes, I did portrait. I wrote that when I was, 30, and I didn't even really write it. It was just a bunch of loose scenes. And I was in the film because I couldn't even tell somebody how to act in it because I didn't know what I was doing. So I do think we need to do a little nod to experimental filmmaking. Like truly, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to use the craft in that way. I'm going to, maybe, and I shot over a year, so
yeah,
it's.
I just thought of one thing, like, don't even think of business or career or anybody supporting until you've found your own voice. Until you feel and that can take a long time. Yeah. Some people are maybe born with more of that than others, and that's a combination of your own experience, your own confidence, but you only get that confidence by doing, so again, youth thinks it's all going to be given to them, but it's not. It's, you're going to have to find your own way, but save everybody some time.
Amen.
Yeah, because I remember thinking that I had a script I was trying to get done. I was like, yeah, why would anyone invest in me? I haven't done anything. I've done this one shitty, yeah, you better just keep on your own path a little longer. Do something on your own again before you put your foot out in the world and expect others to rally around you or your film or your cause. Just do the personal work.
There's a wonderful freedom. I mean, I remember when you wrote to Monty Hellman about what you wanted to do, and he envied you. You know, he was like, I envy that you don't have any constraints.
Yeah.
And I remember Robert Altman saying the same thing when we brought him to Houston. You know, someone raised their hand. Well, it's easy for you to get a movie made. What about me? And it's like, he said, no, actually, it's not. You know, don't. Again, it's this perspective. You know, it's. They know what I've done. You haven't done anything, so the world is your oyster.
I know. He said anyone in this room has a better chance of being financed in Hollywood than I do.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
This was him at that point.
You were at that.
Right.
Yeah, that was the quote.
Yeah.
And it was like, he was so right at that moment.
At that moment. He had just done Tanner. And he
Right.
was really, I mean, talk about, boy, that was so ahead of its time. Was it Tanner 88?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're looking at this, you know, cinema god and yeah. So
I admire him so much. Altman, every passing year he gets more. I hosted a screening of Brewster McCloud at the Film Society. We put it in the Texas Film Hall of Fame last year.
Yeah.
The last words, Brewster McCloud.
Yeah.
Oh man, that film is so crazy and wonderful. And I just, you know, the respect for Altman, he's perpetual.
Then beginner's mind about him. You just felt like everything was just new and fresh. It's like,
jump a decade where he's kicked out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, completely, and he's making, you know, Jimmy Dean, Streamer. I watched Secret Honor again recently. That's really, I mean, this guy was making films for $100,000 again.
Yeah.
You know, but he didn't really stop him. I just admire that so much.
Amazing.
You know?
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life? You both look the exact same way, like the answer's over here somewhere.
Well, to be honest, I feel like I haven't. I mean, I just made my first. I mean, I Dream Too Much is my first feature film, so I feel like I haven't even. I've barely stepped up to plate, you know, as far as filmmaking, because Portrait was, you know, a 60-minute film, so it was kind of not considered a feature. But to ask the question again, what is it that
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life in general?
Still learning that lesson, man. I don't know.
I don't know if I've ever.
For me, it's always been. I always say the same thing: patience. That's for me. It's like, that's the lesson that I finally figured out. Like, okay, it's gonna take forever. Everything I want is gonna take a while, not as fast as I want it. That's my lesson. That's the one that I've learned.
Well, there's that thing. Whatever you're doing, slow it down. You know.
You know, I was blessed in that area. I had some weird patience that. I mean, I was impatient internally, but I was patient externally. Like, I always thought, I would always ask myself, well, where are you going to be a year from now or a day? You know, I could sit there and build to the future. Like, even sitting down going like at 22 or 23, you know, like, oh, getting a camera and equipment. I was thinking like, okay, well, Godard said it like, oh, they don't let you make your first film till you're 30. So I got 7 or 8 years. I just kind of put the bar. I just have achievable goals. Like, my goal was to do 1 feature film by the time I was 30. And in fact, when I got there, I'd done 2, you know, but it was like achievable goals that you can work really hard for. And like, I don't know. Patience is definitely required. Don't get anywhere near film if you don't have the trait of deferred gratification.
Yes. Very much so.
Well,
how about existent gratification? How about that? Not even deferred.
There's non-existent. Yeah, because you never. But I mean, to be honest, Rick, I mean, you're like the king of the long play as far as storytelling is concerned, from Boyhood to the Before trilogy. Like, you definitely have delayed gratification.
Yeah, it turned out that way, but I didn't have that planned, of course. But I think
right.
that is a trait of being process oriented. Like, I love every day that I'm making a movie so much. I really do. If I could just be, I was quoted one time as saying, like, if I could just make movies and they never had to come out, I would be happy. If I could just make them. Like, the coming out part is the least.
Well, don't you think all the filmmakers are like, most filmmakers are like that?
Maybe. I don't know. Not really.
That is the worst
There's
part.
a certain kind of film that it's made for the marketplace, and it's for, and I mean, I don't know.
I always said, like, doing the Film Society, we'd much rather show, you know, something came running than something we're working on.
I'd much rather talk about another film.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Let's talk about all that jazz. You know.
Yeah. No, that's the downside of this modern era, is so much personality of the people involved. You know, like directors in the old studio system, and it wasn't based. No one knew what a director did. I grew up in an era, 60s, 70s. I didn't know who a director was. I mean, Hitchcock was the only one we knew, and I didn't know what he did. I just knew that guy was associated with those kind of scary movies or something.
Well, I'm reading David Brownlow's book on the silent era, Parade Passed By, and they really didn't know what a director was. They just sort of...
They were making it up as they went along.
Yeah.
Because it was such a craft, and it still is a very craft-oriented a medium. And so I do have to say... was it the John Cage quote? Everyone is in the best seat. I think that took me a long, long time to realize.
It's a profound
that everyone
quote.
is in the best seat. So I think it kind of, because I never wanted to be in Beaumont.
Yeah.
I never wanted, and that's the nature of creating art, or especially filmmaking, is you want to create a world, that you latch on and you inhabit. So you're not really that happy where you are. So, but in order to create that, you have to sit down and be happy in the seat you're in. So I think that was something, when that clicked in for me, I think I was finally able to create in film, because it takes so long to make films. Which I think is why I love people in the film business more than any other type of people, even the worst. I love film people. And I remember in Austin going to parties where there were a bunch of musicians and no one wanted to talk. And then I would go to a film movie, and that's all we did was talk about what movies we saw, talk about,
Yeah. So, film's the best atmosphere, because the people who are attracted to it, it's such an external, it's really intelligent, excited people about ideas and stories. Whether they just read a magazine, I just love the innocence of, like, oh, I just read this great story, I think it'd make a great movie. Or I was like, that's so, like, the odds of that magazine article they read that day becoming a movie are like 0.00001. But it happens, and just that impulse, that beautiful impulse to, like, fashion this thing bigger and amazing, and to tell a story in film, and it attracts people who are optimistic, who believe that kind of dream, and want to be in this kind of parallel world. Like, every crew member, everybody there, they could be doing something else. They could have taken their college degree, or they could have, but they're here because they love it. They love storytelling. They love being a part of this, nomadic gypsy, camp of making a movie, that they just love that life, and to be a part of the magic that is in the process. And, there's a certain confidence in the world that they want variety. They want different people coming in and going. I tell people, like, if you want a check every 2 weeks and you want a 2-week vacation, you really, if you care about things like that you can't be in the film business. You have to like the uncertainty, the absolute lack of, anything that you can
any
really
security,
can't.
any security,
any. And the industry's going to take it away from you. You're going to go through personal ups and downs. Like, Alex, when you said, like, oh, I've had highs and lows. Yeah, I think, but I never considered them lows. I considered them like, well, this is where you find yourself. It's like, I mean, it wasn't like physically threatened or harmed. I was just like, oh, this kind of sucks. But I would run into other filmmakers and we'd look at each other and go, can you believe how bad it is? Like, you can't get money, neither can I. And we're like, oh. And then you go like, well, we got lucky by age. We lived through a generation where you could. And then it turns around. Then it goes from being like the worst time to being the best time ever. And I think that's kind of where we are today, like.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching Age of Innocence with my daughter.
Oh, so good. Oh, so beautiful. Oh my God,
I watched
so
that
beautiful.
again this summer with my daughter.
Oh, so amazing.
That's like the 12th time I've seen that, but it was my greatest screening ever. That film just gets more sublime and beautiful.
Well, and I always wanted to write a little short film about what Newland Archer does after he turns away and doesn't go up to the apartment. My daughter said, "Oh no, Mom, we need to do a series of Madame Olenska pre coming to New York. I want to see her life in Europe."
Oh, that must. Oh, I'll see that.
For the first time, I was like, well, of course, I think that's a great idea, but it's like that actually could be something.
Rick, we gotta call Sony. Rick, let's call Sony. Let's get this project going.
Amazing.
They're going into films all the time now. Like, aren't the Clarice? They're doing a Silence of the Lambs show. They're making a thing about. You go into these iconic movies, you grab a character out, and you make a show about them. So, Madame Olenska, there we go.
Olenska, because I mean, the Count was awful. Apparently,
yeah.
I don't know how bad. Please don't let her go back. The secretary says that. It's like, why? What happened? What happened in Italy?
So, all right, so guys.
Incomprehensible education. Really? What was that?
So, all right. So this is the last question, and it's arguably the toughest question of the entire conversation.
Uh-oh.
3 of your favorite films of all time. For everyone not watching, Rick's eyes just busted out of his head.
Does it have to be 3?
Once, when asked this question, I produced a list of 250 films.
300.
I think any of these at any moment could be in my top. It was a top 10 I was asked for.
So in this moment,
depending on the day and how I'm feeling.
So today, how you're feeling, this moment in time, 3 of your favorites.
Can we narrow it down and say the films that we showed in films in
whatever you want?
Country, pick a genre, I don't know, or what you.
It's a tough one. I told you it's a tough one.
It's
a tough one.
The films
you're supposed to
right
just
now,
say over and over.
Here it is. The film like right now that after we're done with this that we have no problem just sitting down and watching.
Okay.
Like just sit down and watch it right now. 3 of them.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, well, like they say, the one that you're flipping through the channels and it's on, you're just going to watch it from wherever.
You throw away the remote movie.
Okay.
At this very moment, but it's based on, I've seen so many this summer with my daughters, like watching films again. So I won't say any of those because I just saw, but the ones I would like to see right this second. Wow. Katie, you can jump in here while I think. I'm overdue a Barry Lyndon screening.
Oh, I just saw that a year ago.
I'm ready to watch Barry Lyndon again with in mind this thing I'm working on. I'm ready to watch. I just think of certain directors.
I'm going to think of more spiritual films since we did talk about that.
Okay. I mean, Barry Lyndon is very spiritual. Any Kubrick film, every Kubrick film is spiritual to me as I watch it. I go to the Church of Kubrick.
I'm kind of in a New York mode too. Just that kind of relationship.
Wow, New York.
Right.
We talked about it here, like creative people get together and just the impossibility of that, making that work.
That's so sad.
It's so tough.
Sad.
Yeah, so joyous. The musical, I don't know. It pulls something off that's rare.
Very rare.
Well, in honor of my dad, and he's got his hard hat right back here.
Oh, wow.
That's beautiful.
I have to say Gigi.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I love that.
It's a coming of age film, beautifully. It's a jewel. It's everything comes together. It's really just perfect film. It hits all the right notes. It's so I can watch that anytime. So there's Gigi.
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 And
I don't want this to turn into a painful thing, so we can move on if you like.
Fanny and Alexander. Of all of Bergman's films, I break for Fanny and Alexander. It's really so beautiful, and yeah.
I mean, honestly, the one of my favorite Kubrick films is Eyes Wide Shut, and it gets, for me, I absolutely love Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay, so we have to do another podcast where all we talk about is Eyes Wide Shut.
Yes,
I love that movie, and to me, it was Madame Bovary meets Lost Highway.
Oh, so it's remarkable. Remarkable for me.
Eyes Wide Shut is amazing. Another film that I've come around on completely, and I think a lot of people. I mean, I didn't dislike it the way others seem to, but watching the great trilogy this summer, my Godfather 3 is actually so much better.
It's
so much
the new
better.
cut. Is that the new cut? Is that the new cut?
Are you agreeing with me?
No. Kay would have been killed. She would have not been allowed to live. First off, Eli Wallach comes in way too late in the film for him to be any sort of, and don't make that film without Robert Duvall. Sorry.
Well, they would have had Duvall, but they worked it around.
No, it's
completely underrated. It's really a mature middle-aged. I don't know. I totally.
It's look. The bottom line is when you're comparing it to Godfather 1 and 2, you really can't win that fight.
Like Eyes Wide Shut. How do you compare it to the body of work? It was kind of misunderstood in its day. I think Godfather 3 is ascending. I just mark my word.
You think Michael, who kills Fredo, is going to allow Kay to live with all that she knows? No. I have to go with David Thompson on this. She would be dead. She would be dead.
He could do that.
Yes, he could.
Listen,
okay, we have to come up with a third one. Let's just do the one we love. Come on, Rick. Something running.
Oh, yeah. The Vincent Minnelli. Boy, I bet that's really, I almost hesitate to show that to people post, in this era. It was always pushing the boundaries in the Me Too era, how poorly they treat women, or at least a couple women.
You can do what Turner Classic Movies is doing, which is talking about it, reframing it. They did that with The Searchers.
How does Blazing Saddles come out today?
Well,
I mean, seriously.
But Some Came Running is so beautiful. I do love it. It's still a perennial. It's always at the top of my lists because, Frank, Dean, Shirley, and I haven't seen it just lately. I want to show it to I'm almost scared to show it to my daughters.
They won't like it.
No.
Well, listen. I love that this has been film geeks united. I mean, it's fantastic that there's been so much debate about cinema, and it's just been wonderful like being a fly. Well, I think everyone listening is like a fly on the wall on just some filmmakers who just saw a movie or are sitting in a Denny somewhere at midnight after watching a movie, and they're just talking about cinema, essentially.
That sounds like so much fun. We used to go to IHOP.
Yeah, IHOP, Denny's, whatever was open at the time.
Whatever's near the theater that you just came out of.
But it has been an absolute pleasure. Where can everybody see I Dream Too Much?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
I'm glad it's finally getting out there.
Yeah.
It's had its own little path, hasn't it?
My producers told me to, and of course I don't know. So it's definitely on Amazon and like Hulu,
Tubi, and those kind of places. Yeah.
And all the
usual.
All the usual places.
All the usual spots.
Good spot.
Talk to your TV.
And I will put links in the show notes. But guys, I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been an absolute joy just geeking out with you guys about cinema over
geeks.
Listen. Let's call a spade. Let's call a spade a spade.
Drunk.
We're cinephiles. We're cinephiles. I'm sorry. But it's been absolutely wonderful. But thank you so much for your time, guys. I truly appreciate it.
This is
great
great.
talking to
Thank
you, Alex.